Another really cool feature of freeform modeling is the ability to conform one surface to another. And that would be really helpful in a situation like this where I want to cause this road to hug the surface of the landscape underneath it. The road's currently floating above that surface. We can see that a little bit better if we turn on shadows in the viewport. Here in the viewport menu, in the middle of those three menus, we can select that and go into lighting and shadows and turn on the shadows. That makes it really clear that the road is floating above the landscape. To conform one object to another, you need to follow some very strict procedures. And it's not really intuitive, and you'll have to follow this process precisely to get it to work. First and foremost, the objects have to be editable poly. Both of them need to be. This one here, the road, is actually currently a plane, and I can tell that even though my Modify panel is hidden because the Freeform tab shows nothing up here. And that really is a dead giveaway that this is not an editable poly object. I'll convert it by right-clicking in the view and choosing Convert to Editable Poly, and now we've got all the tools. With that object selected, the one that we want to conform, we can now go up into the Freeform tab, and up here there's a button labeled Grid. And that allows us to select the object that we want to draw on or that we want to conform to. And that's a pull-down list. So click on the little down arrow and choose Draw on Surface. Once you do that, you want to then select the surface that you want to conform to. To do that, click this button labeled Pick, and then click on the object that you want to conform to. And then its name will be displayed here. It says Ground Plane. Next, we want to adjust the offset amount here. That's how far away those two surfaces will be after we do the conform operation. If we left this at a value of 0, what would happen is that we would see the ground plane sticking up through the road in certain locations. And that's because these are at slightly different levels of detail, and the edges of the road are not going to align precisely with the edges of the ground plane. And so we would see parts of the ground plane sticking through. We can avoid that by giving it a little bit of an offset. So I'll set this to a value of 0.1 centimeters. Then we need to activate the Conform tool. And that's this button over here. Turn on Conform. Next, we need to change the conform amount. And that's way over here in the options. The default conform amount is only 0.1. If I start clicking and dragging over here, it is going to cause the road to move downward, but it's not going to snap to the ground plane. We can increase the conform amount to cause that to happen. Just set the conform up to a value of 1. And now when we drag across here, it snaps right onto the ground plane really easily. Pretty neat. Now don't worry about these over here, these polygons here that are beyond the boundary of our snap to or conform to object. If we really needed to, we could go ahead later and delete those polygons. But for now, it's sufficient that we've conformed those polygons and vertices to the surface of the road. Now, the next thing we might want to do here is to cause the road to hug the surface of the landscape. If we look at this here, it's a straight line. That's not really very naturalistic. We really want that road to kind of curve and go around and go through the mountains. We can do that using another tool called Move Conform. That's up here. Looks like a little move tool. You can activate that. And then if you click and drag, you can push that conformed object around and it'll still stick to the conforming object. And to get better control over how that occurs, you can adjust the fall off and the full strength radius of your brush. I'll undo that operation. Up here we've got two values, full strength and fall off. Full strength is the inner white circle there. Anything that's inside that circle will receive the full amount of deform move or deform transform. And then that influence will fall off linearly until it reaches the outer black circle, and that's the fall off radius. If I increase the full strength amount a bit, let's say up to like about 100, we can see there's a difference now between those two radii. It's probably easier to use the keyboard shortcut for that. The full strength radius shortcut is Control, Shift, and drag. We can increase that full strength. And then the fall off radius, we can adjust that here as well. Or again, we can use the keyboard shortcut. And the shortcut for that is Control and drag. Now, if I have those two radii almost the same, then when I click and drag on that conformed object, then you can see the effect of having a very high full strength radius. All right, well, what I really want here is to have a very smooth and soft effect. And that means I should have a low full strength radius and a high fall off radius. I'll reduce the full strength amount, again, with Control, Shift, and drag. Bring that down very low, almost to nothing, maybe a value of about 4 or 5. And then increase the fall off amount with Control, click. Okay, now I've got a pretty good situation there. I'll undo that movement that I did a minute ago with Control Z, and then boom, now I've got a lot better control over how my road's going to conform. Now, it's not all perfect. You can notice that as you move this around, that it's actually going to slightly distort the shape of the conformed object. And that's just sort of an outcome of the tool itself. But it's not really a problem because you can also just use the Relax or Soften tool to sort of fix that issue a bit. To use that Relax Soften tool, you can go up and just click on the button and then drag, and that's going to soften that up a bit. Now, as you see, it's still causing it to poke through, and we probably want to fix that too so we can push and pull that selected object up by just a tiny amount. We can set that offset amount to something like 0.1 and then just pull that up a bit to sort of manually fix that. Maybe bring the size down. Again, it's Control Shift to change the brush radius. We can sort of touch that up and make that better. All right, pretty great. That's how we can conform the surface of one object to another using the freeform modeling tools.